Welcome to Tough Tech Today with Mayan and Miller. This is the premier show featuring trailblazers who are building technologies today to solve tomorrow's toughest challenges.
All right, looks like we're live. How's it going, J-Mail?
It's going okay, more than okay. So good to see you. I'm digging. You're living in a screensaver, and it's so beautiful.
That's right. That's right. So if you are on YouTube, you don't need to pull up the fire, Yule fire thing. You can just watch the show and watch the fire slowly burn down while listening to our soothing voices, right?
Yeah, for those who are listening only, for us to start to embody the painting that's in his room of looks like a fine colonial gentleman kicking one back in the den. It's so cozy.
Yeah, I'll have to get a smoking jacket once it gets a little cooler. It's still pretty warm out, so I hear winter's on its way for you, J-Mail.
Absolutely, yes. It's we have the snowflakes, and as they say in McDonald's land, I'm loving it because I think once it gets below freezing, or like sunglasses and t-shirt weather, kind of warm or kind of cold is I think my happy spots. So I don't like the wet and soggy. I like nice dry snow. So exciting for that.
Nice. Well, today we've got a great show for people to cozy up next to. The topic is UAPs. J-Mail, do you want to tell people what a UAP is?
Yeah, absolutely. UAP can mean many things to many people, but the way that we're taking it is as the U is unidentified, the A is anomalous, and the P is phenomena. So this would be something that would look at what are pilots observing or ground crews, trained observers, etc. What are folks seeing in various parts of aerospace most commonly? And is this are these flight safety risks? Are there ground stops at airports? What might these be? Or maybe in the other sense, what may they not be? These kinds of various types of phenomena that emerge through congressional testimony, we hear about it, and of course through eyewitness reports, et cetera. So we thought we'd dive into some of the technological implications, legal, anthropological, and so on this topic.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting that kind of the conversation around UAPs has changed recently. For a long time, it was almost kind of like hush hush. The government wouldn't really talk about many of these cases. And so it seemed to be more of something that was discussed kind of on the fringes. But now you have congressional testimony, you have pilots talking about some of these phenomena, and it's really brought them to the forefront of kind of the American psyche, kind of understanding what these are, because there's implications not only, from a military perspective, a technology perspective, but also, as J-Mill likes to say, an anthropologic perspective. Can you explain some of the high level implications of this, what this could be, and then we can dig in a little bit deeper on, what's been seen?
Yeah, so it's something that I'll take the last part first, which is that so then what are the kind of observables that would differentiate some sort of anomalous phenomena from something that's more commonly seen, and some of those observables include things like what the apparent kind of instantaneous acceleration without like the kind of inertia that we would expect. If you're in an aircraft and pulling hard G's, pulling the stick back, it kind of it takes a while to make those kinds of trajectory changes. And so something's anomalous, it would maybe not have that kind of. Likewise with minimal of like say thermal signatures or the kind of shock wave of sound that we would commonly see with anything that's going very fast, and as well as other things like an ability to make something that might look different visually than it would show up on your radar or on your infrared. And so those kind of how do we make something that looks like a circle here and a square there and not show up on the third at all? that's a head scratcher in terms of physics. And so that may, as we try to figure out what it is and what it may not be, that's where there's, well, it's starting to get a lot more, I think, sort of rational attention and scrutiny that we would hope to have to be able to figure out what should. I mean, we can be skeptical on all of it, but what may actually be standing the scrutiny of evidence, and we can't then explain it. That then is where we want to go at the like 0.00001% of or whatever the number is of cases.
Yeah, no, certainly. And there's probably a broad array of, things that are under this classification. And, for the longest time, I've been pretty much, a skeptic of these sorts of things. I work in technology. I work with different sensors. You often see interesting artifacts that kind of show up. But the recent video that kind of blew my mind was the video, and maybe we'll find a clip for it for the viewers to check out. But the video of the UAP that they fired a Hellfire missile at, right? And it kind of just like hit and bounced off. That kind of changed, my perspective of these things. There's, there's something that we don't know, that is happening, that we're encountering not just visually with sensors, but also physically. Have you seen that video, J-Mill?
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting. I, of course, would like the super 4K, 8K version to see the details. Maybe it exists on some disc somewhere, but yes. And I aspire to be open-minded, but also kind of neutral on things. It's like, well, some skeptics, I think, do have reasonable lines of comment saying, well, can we really be sure, and et cetera. But it is pretty interesting, provided that video and some of the others like it are there's like a chain of provenance to how those were recorded and how those were released publicly in some sort of authenticated way. To me, that has a lot of weight too. Much less what the video itself is showing, but the fact that there's a sort of a chain of understanding as to how this came to be, and the kind of folks that are supporting its release, or sometimes it's very reluctant of its release. And so
you're saying there's some situations where we don't necessarily know where the video came from, or there's like less chain of custody, so it makes it cast more doubt on what's being shown.
Absolutely. I think that that's part of where on some of the enhancements we've seen, or in the study of UAP, is that we are seeing maybe it's just a trickle, but still non-zero in terms of the quality of kind of like different kinds of sensors, without revealing, say, proprietary data capture techniques from the U.S. military or some other group, being able to see that these are something is showing up, and it's of concern. I've been in the position, I guess, fortunately, to be able to speak with folks, some who are who have experienced this maybe firsthand, seeing with their eyes or feeling or whatever, but also folks who've been in sort of classified situations. They're not sharing with me classified information, but sharing that they've seen some fascinating archives of videos that these are individuals that are trained to see and manage like one or many more kinds of like drones and aerial platforms, and the kind of data captures that occurs on those. And then there's this, like, well, as we would say, an anomalous kind of recording that's tracked not for the 5 seconds blurry version, but the super high quality, to use an untechnical phrase, super high quality and many minutes or more of capture, which is, I'm not necessarily like, hey, we should just disclose everything, and risk, every nation's security or something. But I think that's fascinating that the people who that are reluctant to share information, they're like this shook them in some way. I think that has importance too. It's not necessarily about the message; it's about who is sharing it and why. If they don't have any skin in the game, in fact, it's probably overall negative situation for them to talk about it or to share what they can.
Yeah. So there's unmanned aerial phenomena, and I think this kind of separates from like unidentified flying objects a little bit, because I think it's a more appropriate term, because now with the amount of drones and other things like flying in the air, I mean, you're going to encounter lots of things that are just flying things that are unidentified. But the interesting thing about some of these UAP cases is they defy what we think would be classified as a drone, or the capabilities of technology that we are aware of. Is that kind of one of the big differences?
Yeah, that's correct. It's that there can even be there have been descriptions of transmedium movements. Also, transmedium being, I guess, a fancy word for something that could maybe go from being underwater to the air, and potentially even beyond high up in the atmosphere, and doing that in rapid or regular succession. That's an incredibly hard physics and vehicle design problem to be cracking, if to be able to go through those different kinds of fluids or lack thereof if you're high up above the atmosphere. And so those are the kind of head scratchers that's saying, well, what physics would need to be true then to enable that observation, if that is being observed, and we have reliability of the sensors and whatnot that have captured that, then what needs to be true for that to be occurring? That's, again, independent of saying it's not like Little Green Men or some other near peer adversary of the United States or the Western world or something. It's like, I mean, if this is an unmanned or uncrewed aerial or submersible system, that's still really incredible that it could be able to do that. And what happens? How would that change the way a military would protect its ships or its assets, or how would civilians? How should we be concerned about that, or just go about our daily lives? And then the potential for, especially with generative AI, sort of just turning the knob up to 11 on mis or disinformation associated with that. How to know what is fact or what is a true or verified kind of document. It's not impossible. It's just some of the tooling, I think, around that is changing.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a challenge now in the realm of public perception, at least us kind of understanding what's real or not, because, Gen AI, you can create all sorts of crazy things. So the chain of custody is important, and almost there's this period where older sightings and observations are going to be more valuable. But you've outlined a couple of steps as we seek to unpack this topic and figure out what's going on, right? The first is, observation, having multiple observations. The second is establishing the kind of chain of custody of the data to verify that the data is, real, that this is something actually observed. Then the third step you've mentioned is trying to understand what's been observed through physics to see what are the kind of the implications of the sighting. What we describe as the kind of the fourth step as we, try to unpack, what's being observed and the implications of it.
Well, there's a way that, like I say, a citizen scientist can help to capture data on that, or we know there would be military platforms that presumably outperform anything you could buy on the market, and would probably be incredibly hard to build at home. But separate. So if we don't have access to something like those proprietary systems, then how can we document better. And there are like a background astronomer has access to pretty good, or could with some money and time, good kind of telescopes, or like sort of night vision capable kind of lenses and data capture that can capture larger amounts of the sky. It doesn't have to be at night, but that just tends to be more common for astronomy. And we can start to build up a better, maybe say, crowdsourced kind of database of just what is going on, what is above our heads. And that would need, and is commonly done if there's, say, a witness report that would come in that they saw, some sort of like lights and they seemed weird, or maybe like in formation, like a triangle formation or something. Well, fortunately now we're in a position, we as people can check public flight logs. There's various flight apps and whatever that if a aircraft is sending out their so-called ADS-B transponder, they're sort of sending out a ping, if you will, that kind of says, hey, I'm here, I'm this kind of craft, and we can do a little bit of that kind of like disambiguation, as well as what stars or comets or whatever are known. And satellites themselves are a very common way to get people concerned, because if Starlink satellites, there's a lot of them. For example, just as one large constellation, there's many thousands of those. They're painted basically like Vanta black, so they're hard to see, but could still be seen, especially by good sensors. And so you start seeing these like non-blinking lights. It's weird.
No, it is. I remember the first Starlink satellite chain I saw is sitting in a hot tub in Winter Park, and I look up and just little light goes across the sky real slowly, then another one. It was just like a pearl necklace. I think now, they're painting them a little darker, but you see, it kind of brought up, there's kind of this citizen scientist aspect that can, support for making observations. And then there's this cross-checking process, of like common things that may be seen, whether it's, satellites, things falling from space, different aircraft. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of the like hypotheses out there for the different, UAPs? Like what are some of the explanations that are pitched? And then what are some examples of things that just no one has a good explanation for yet?
Well, there's a lot there. In terms of explanation, it's as colorful as anybody could imagine. If you bucket into some that are like, say, to be like super blunt, there's like everything is explained and known already. Then there's the folks that are like everything is some sort of like, I don't know, ethereal being camp, and those are like two extremes. Like one is like super grounded on there's nothing that we don't know. The other saying there's a whole lot. And then somewhere in between, it could be the range of, yes, of course, there could be like some sort of non-human intelligence that's some sort of like, aliens, if you will. Now, are they going to be purple people eating aliens or what? I don't know. We're not going to go into like all the, all of that. There's a ton there. But there could also be, we as humans have built silicon non-human intelligence quite well, and are getting quite more sophisticated. If anybody's used ChatGPT in the past couple of years, firsthand that hey, it's kind of amazing. It's got its flaws, but think about as that develops, and as per our prior episodes, talk more about the physical application of some sort of non-human intelligence, artificial, silicon-based intelligence to robotics and discoveries. Well, there's a lot that could be there. Now we have to explain that if we as I say, even if something lands on the White House lawn, who's all going to believe it? You'd have to sort of prove out a lot, and is the public ready for it? Well, it's we can try and see.
So are you kind of alluding to super intelligent alien space probes?
No, we're less on trying to figure out what it is, and it's again saying, well, what is this not? And is it's something, for example, there are like, say, consumer drones that could at least historically get pretty close or onto, say, a busy airport and cause a ground stop. I mean, that was, I mean, these were toys, but they can cause a lot of damage.
Sure.
A couple kilogram quadcopter hitting a helicopter rotor blade or going into a jet turbine could be really bad. But then sometimes the observations of such things coming from some part of the ocean that's on a distance of flight that is potentially beyond what any known sort of craft could do of whatever size. That's interesting. Not saying it's good. Not saying it's alien or something, but it's that could be a point of concern, because if something is a craft or crafts are emerging, 10 of them, 1,000 of them, that's something that would change the way that from a national security perspective, how might we protect from that if there is malicious intent? If there's not malicious intent, then how to try to say don't come, and how to try to protect one's assets. Think your nuclear facilities or whatever, your power plants and stuff. That would just be a really bad day if something were to happen to those, even accidentally, right?
Yeah. So how about, like, I want to double click on kind of like the defense implications. So there's one camp that, or one potential theory that these could be technologies that are kind of top secret, developed by an adversary. What sort of evidence do we have that could be the case, or what sort of evidence is it that maybe, refutes that?
Well, there's certainly, there are cases in the past where this may not necessarily be anomalous, but where what we would call in the Western world the Hind helicopter was a Soviet produced sort of helicopter. Soviet Union produced helicopter was a fearsome part of the battlefield in many ways the world over. The reach of the Soviet Union was large, and so the Western world, United States et al. Then when there came an opportunity, if I recall, in the state of Georgia, not the U.S. state of Georgia, but the nation of Georgia, part of the former Soviet Union. Actually, I think it now is Libya. We can put in the show notes the proper history. But there was an opportunity to be able to collect one of these craft. And so that was a big operation under secrecy to figure out how to, like U.S. led, but with partners, be able to get into somewhere where there shouldn't be, to collect a feared craft and then bring it back to, in this case, to the United States, to then reverse engineer it, fly it, figure out all of its capabilities and flaws, so that if you ever face that again, we have a bit of a playbook. It's a way to learn a lot faster, and it's something that's commonly, it's a battlefield necessity today with wherever there is a battle hotspot. We've seen this in Ukraine, et cetera, where whatever one side is throwing over the trench to the other, or flying over or whatever, then whoever's receiving that, figure it out, understand all of its electronic and acoustic signatures and command and control, et cetera, and then try as fast as possible build that into your kind of defensive posture, so that that becomes less of a threat on next week, right? And so you do that as fast as possible. Then there's a lot of proprietary techniques to do that in the modern world, and so back to what you were saying in terms of, well, might it be an adversary? It certainly could be, and if it's unidentified, we don't want to necessarily assume it's an adversary and that they're not supposed to be there and that they should be blown out of the sky, because that could have unintended consequences. If we don't know what the payload is on this, we don't know who's operating it, we could learn a lot kind of by monitoring it, which may or may not have been what occurred with some of the so-called China balloon or balloons. There were actually sort of 5 different known craft over North America back in 2023, if I recall correctly. And so there were some balloon, I think balloon 4 and 5 were particularly quote unquote balloon. These were just strange detection, strange response, and showed evidence that there's a lot of filtering going on of sensors across like what NORAD uses for like missile defense and other sort of forms of tracking, seeing that there are like levels of filtering being exercised, not necessarily clear exactly by whom or which groups, but that's a way to kind of provide a better way to get the signal amid the noise. But what a signal is, kind of like one man's trash, another man's treasure. The signal that air traffic control needs is probably different than what a weatherman or weather person needs, which is different than what maybe your military defense person, your hypersonics, Golden Dome kind of person would want to understand. But it's probably the same sensor capturing all of it. It's just getting kind of, some parts getting diluted, partitioned, machine learning to figure out what to unearth.
So you're saying in those balloon cases, they were not observed as soon as possible because of some of this filtering, or they just had strange signatures because of how we observe the skies.
Well, my understanding is that there's been the kind of the official line has been that so the first balloon was strange, but that we have the photos, and we can take those, let's say that those are true. There's a balloon that was drifted over and recovered from like off the coast of Virginia. But then there's some official line that, well, the tuning was changed then to try to not filter out such kinds of craft. And that's what then led to the detection of craft 2 and craft 3, et cetera. And so, that shows a sort of a tweaking of the filter, or how much are we going to screen or not screen. But then to the level of being some of those craft or observed craft were they seemed, at least in the earlier reports by pilots and whatnot, seemed to not exhibit your typical balloon behavior, like station keeping in high winds, high aloft. Like that's very hard to do, or no signs of propulsion. One may be like, well, a balloon, no sign of propulsion, it kind of floats there, but not in hurricane level winds. And so those are some of those like kind of breadcrumb pieces. We don't want to read too much into it, but there was quite a response in the Yukon, North Alaska, for some of those craft, and that's more than what you would expect from your balloon that's kind of known, it's kind of drifting, and the payload on that, what it could sense, could be something sensitive from some adversary, but it's quite a response, and no clear outcome as to what happened. Like there's not much of a justification for the amount of like American taxpayer dollars spent for that potential recovery effort.
So you're saying some of those later balloons, we don't know. We never recovered them. We don't know what they looked like. Is that kind of what you're saying?
It's highly unclear, especially given the amount of response of what appear to be military aligned kind of aircraft, helicopters, et cetera, in North Alaska. And so it's and I can imagine as a Department of Defense or Department of War official, one may be like, you can't say everything because there needs to be something protected for national security purposes. But for a lot of folks who are, it's like, well, something was going on substantially because of the amount of effort. Otherwise, you're tasking very precious assets away from whatever else needs to help, keep the country safe or our allies safe. And so that's something that is a point of concern. If it's not just an exercise.
Got it.
And that kind of goes into some of it's the U.S. It's Great Britain. It's an ally that's testing this. You don't want
to shoot it down if it's an ally, and especially if something has people in it, right? So there's definitely, you got to hold your fire when you don't understand what something is, which kind of makes that one video kind of even more interesting, the decision making process there. But that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, but also it'll be a little weird if you're if you had some we don't want to like the intelligence community or something violate every rule in the book in terms of flying some sort of experimental craft over fellow service members or something. That's kind of a big legal no.
Yeah.
So there's
certainly
concerns in that way. Yeah.
So we'll have to find ways to capture these things to understand more. So
maybe old film-based cameras, because something with sometimes the charge coupled devices on your average iPhone may not have it might get a little goofed up sometimes, depending on what the countermeasures potentially deployed by an advanced craft. Electronic warfare is a very important part of the modern battlefield, or trying to reduce the next, to make the next war not as bad or as quick as possible. Just like information warfare is part of that.
Yeah, no, certainly. So, I mean, sensing technologies, there's, I think, a huge drive for those to kind of improve to understand these things more. Now that there's more and more stuff flying around, there's hypersonics, there's rockets, there's satellites. There's a lot more to sort through when observing these different phenomena. So it's an exciting time. There's, I think, a lot to be learned. But it is, I think, good news as a member of the public that some of these things are kind of being discussed in congressional hearing. But I think the downside of that is certainly, the most interesting tidbits, which would be if if it is like an adversary, or if it's even, something more existential, threat than that still has to be hyper classified. And so anything that the public is getting is probably still just, part of the story.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, but there's work by folks. There's a subcommittee at the AIAA, the American Institute for Aeronautics and Astronautics, that has worked on again, as you may guess, like on a scientific level to explore this topic and publish on it, so we can start to continue building up that sort of academic rigor. And then there's groups. I'm a volunteer with Ryan Graves' nonprofit called Americans for Safe Aerospace, which is looking to how to focus on the aviator and flight crews and the folks in that orbit, how to ensure there's at least proper reporting and some semblance of sense making for folks who are trained observers, and these are like let's say like America's best pilots, or a fighter pilot and their crews, and so if they are concerned, let's try to make it so they're not concerned, like that either this is normal or here's what to do, and here's who to take that that report or that information to, so it doesn't scare the next pilot, because if that moment of uncertainty could literally be life and death for them or someone else. So it has to be keep that as rigorous as possible.
Yeah, certainly. So speaking of rigor, one thing that you do is you train people to think through your classes at MIT, and apply the scientific method and rigor to every day or even these sorts of phenomena. So you have a course that's coming up related to this topic. Can you tell us, what the title is, what you intend to teach?
Absolutely. You say, I try to teach people to think. I try my best to bring in folks who already are extremely good thinkers and try not to leave them worse off than when they came in. But yeah, no, you're right. I've been focused on as my learning journey on this and associated topics around, like, say, UAP and just unknowns is, well, how can we be better as sense makers? And by that I mean, if you're running an e-commerce company, you're as a leader, you need to be making sense on mushy or incomplete kind of data, sometimes what feels like opposite kinds of data, and lead your team to hopefully success. Likewise, if you're an aviator or someone who's pursuing in a difficult situation, we want to try to make sense given what we have and what we can get. And so the course is called Confronting Unknowns. It's a non-credit course that we are running in January, and it's for me, it's like an initiative to bring together the folks who understand how advanced sensors work, how they don't work, as well as say the latest on autonomous systems, swarming concepts that could be useful for building a construction site. If I have 100 little robots that can fly around and build my building, so I don't have to put a human in danger, he or she can do something else that's more value add for them. That understanding what is and will be science fact, while recognizing that so much of our modern world was science fiction, not that long ago, and so with that. The layers of the onion, sense making on the outside. Then we focus in on unidentified anomalous phenomena as to the second part of that onion, and then the core being a focus on aerospace safety, so that we're not necessarily going off in the weeds on Bigfoot or ghosts or something. It's how can we understand what will be for aerospace safety, and that touches on, as I mentioned before, we touched on a little bit, like reverse engineering. How's it done? If I find a weird craft, how do I take it apart? How do I test it, et cetera? If how is information sort of created, packaged, disseminated, or disinformation, and how do we be skeptical in a healthy way for the sources of information? And then, and so much more that we'll be delivering, and hopefully with some sort of simulation or what we might call wargaming, but not warmongering, but like some aspect of so that folks during or after the course can get that kind of taste of some of that of what do you do when you don't know what to do, so that you get the deja vu moment later on. You're a little bit less hesitant.
So someone going to be like a general and someone's a president, and they present the new information and they got to decide if they shoot it down or not.
Maybe just play cards. I don't know. Just it's like poker. I think there's a lot that can be done. For example, wouldn't it be cool if we could have with a like X-Plane or one of the like a desktop class flight simulator, be able to have and expose the challenges of when you have your virtual pilot and he or she's flying. They're afraid, or they're flying over the the North Pacific, and they doing their job, and then how would they describe something that they see that they're not sure how to explain? Is it a comet? Is it a UFO? Whatever. And then how to the game of telephone, as you say, how as they're trying to communicate that to maybe there's a Coast Guard ship, and maybe there's a air traffic control nearby, and all the way that can percolate through. That can be really enlightening for a student, sure, like a traditional undergrad or graduate student, but also if we have a professional who may have been in one of those sort of roles, very enlightening and could help us improve the way that we understand such phenomena. Yeah.
No, certainly. I could see how you could inject some known things and see how the game of telephone goes, and inject something similar to just more of the unknown things that people haven't, figured out yet. That could be great.
You made a game for like lunar exploration, didn't you? It was some time ago. I think you were.
Oh yeah.
I think
I did. I made a simulation kind of card game that was fill the payload manifest of your lunar rover with different kind of values assigned and probabilities of success to different like sensors you could add, payloads, things like that. Devised it in about 12 hours. Just went hardcore, and then brought it to a conference. MIT's they have a space conference in the Media Lab called Beyond Earth, and that was a lot of fun. So simulations are great. My favorite IAP course at MIT was 16747. So we, spent a month learning how to fly a 747. So that was pretty enlightening for me. How to operate was that?
That's the leeway. It's not how to fly, because FAA or somebody gets a little concerned.
Oh,
teaching undergrad how to fly a 747, but to operate one. Yeah.
teaching how to operate, but we operated it, and it was all the buttons, just use your checklist.
The flows are. I also had the benefit of 16.747, and so it's a great way to flight simulator time plus when available, be able to go over to Boston Logan and tap the metal of of a big plane.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a cool experience. So, well, I think your students will look forward to it. So how'd you get interested in this particular topic? Like what made it something that became a fascination to the point that you'll be teaching a class about it?
Well, it's something that folks that I think that folks who to me are credible and not the kind of no BS kind of folks. I hang among pilots, so I kind of know some of that demographic. There's some bravado. It kind of comes with the territory. But
are you going to be a pilot? Are you working on that?
Well, it's on the roadmap. I ultimately would like to get into rotorcraft. It's a bit of a path, and they burn like more money per hour than almost anything else. So
they could shorten your commute from your farm to MIT.
Perhaps, or the maintenance cost. For every hour of flight, the multi X number of hours of maintenance may actually make it much longer. As I tell my spouse is, well, if you have time to spare, you go by air, and so it's faster just to drive. But it's something that I think. I mean, for the topics of unknowns certainly is something I think is absolutely relevant to anyone, but also that for years, many years, following like interesting stories, cool story, bro, and then pulling the threads a little more and being like, wow, yeah, like these are fascinating people, and some of whom are certainly not gaining much from what they experienced. In fact, it's sometimes often a negative burden, and so it's like, well, that's interesting. And maybe it's a little bit like the I don't know, empathy, like that's an interesting aspect of humanity, and then being like, well, maybe there's more to it, and how can we understand that? How can we citizenize that, and share it out, what we can find and work on it together. So I think it's an admirable thing, and who wouldn't want to make sense of the world and our place in it? That can help.
Yeah,
we still got to go get bread at the store or whatever, but at least if you have a better sense of what you're doing and how to deal with unknowns, move it from ignoring the unknowns to recognizing them along the spectrum, to confronting them, and then maybe eventually the fourth stop on that spectrum, in my view, is to embrace the unknowns. We're all facing that anyway. I mean, who knows, what's going to happen tomorrow. So let's try to lean in a little bit.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, it really kind of speaks to also, in a way, kind of what tough tech is, right? I mean, tough tech is tough because of the unknowns. It's tough because it's new things that haven't been demonstrated or put together in a certain way. I mean, we've talked about new frontiers in biotechnology, new frontiers in quantum computing, like new things where you need to follow the same process to determine not only, is a new concept or something, is it real? Is it feasible? But also, how do you make something that's not yet real based on the knowledge out there real? So it's kind of a two-step thing, not only, confronting what's unknown, but understanding things enough to create them known and create, usefulness for society. So I think that's a big part why this is a great, topic of conversation for the show today, is because, all of tough tech is, confronting the unknown. Absolutely
well said. All the work all the amazing entrepreneurs and investors and every stakeholder that we work with, you got to have some optimism about what it is that you're working on. And, we don't know if fusion will work, but we have reason to believe that it's possible, and that could be a great thing for our planet and every other field of science, like you brought up, science and engineering. It's wonderful. I think that's something that's almost I don't know. Puts a bounce in the step when you're talking with the tough tech community, because it's you feel like you're kind of grueling through the mud, but there's this kind of North Star kind of concept that you can see it in like in you and your team, Forrest. I mean, with the years ago, the vision of what Lunar Outpost could become, in that you're building it. That is science fiction that's becoming science fact, and to me that's super awesome.
Yeah. Oh, it's certainly been a wild journey, and every time for me, confronting the unknown, you create your models, your simulations, different things like that, and then you don't know until you go. And one of the most couple huge moments for me in our last mission to the moon was when we sent the rover in transit to the moon, and we get all of our thermal data back. We see our computer controlling the temperature of the craft as it goes out into space. You can see the signatures of the orbits around the moon as the thing warms, as the vehicle warms and cools. And that's stuff that you simulate. You confront the unknown, but then when you see it and it's known, it's wild. It's amazing. And it's also very calming. You're like, yes, science and physics still works. And then you tune it to make things better. So, and we're making the future happen there. The dream of really harnessing the resources of space for the betterment of humankind seems so distant for so long. And now it's real. It's here. It's a career for many people at our company. And it's another optimistic piece of excitement for what the future can be. So hopefully for unmanned aerial phenomena, we find that same bit of optimism. I think there's a little bit of kind of fear and nervousness about what it is out there, but I do think that as we understand more, it could lead to some very interesting discoveries.
Yeah, I think it's a stone worth turning over as part of our journey as humans. Impacts the species.
So, J-Mail, if anyone's interested in your course, how do they sign up?
Well, so we stay tuned on LinkedIn, and ping me if it looks like I've been quiet. So I'll be opening up. We have registrations opening in a little while, and so at the time of airing, it's probably about the release. And so you'll apply. It's a registration process, and then we'll see how many folks we get. If it's 6 people, or probably not 600, but we'll figure it out based on the classroom and feasibility that we have. But separate from that is also, by following us on Tough Tech Today and Forrest and me individually on like say LinkedIn or wherever, that's another way to be part of the overall, not just the discussion, but like hopefully the co-discovery of what each of us is working on individually and together. Yeah.
That's right. Like and subscribe. We really appreciate when listeners, mention the podcast or the show. We always love engaging in discussions with you. So please, engage online, but also if we see you in person, we'd be happy to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Send it to someone you think could use a little uplift on the world of tough tech.
Great.
Well, on that inspiring note, Forrest, should we give our sign off?
All right, let's do it. 3, 2, 1. Stay tough. Oh, okay. We'll fix that.
I think that was a good one. I think that was, I don't know. On my end, it sounded pretty good, but.
Really?
Well, we're never synced.
You were like 3 seconds behind me.
Okay,
all right.
Well, my upload speed's probably slow.
Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Yeah.